I've been here nearly 80 years. I'm fourth generation and my grandchildren are sixth generation Rangitata fishermen. And my great-grandfather, he was drowned down here in 1903, so we've got a very close affiliation and connection with the river. I think you're sort of born under a stone, and I was born under a stone on the Rangitata River. It's the environment that I've lived in. As a child, my only aspiration was to go fishing. Fishing is an emotional trip. You know, anticipation, excitement, sometimes success. This fish here was caught on 9-pound line and it weighed 36 pounds. And it took me 3/4 of an hour to bring it in. I can't remember, it was 1972 or 1974. Sometimes I wouldn't sleep in the hut here, I'd sleep out on the riverbank. You know, I know the river as good as pretty well anyone down here. Yeah. The hut settlement here was mainly settled and built in the 1950s and 60s. As a hut holder, we advocate for the area. You know, we've got some current issues of the coastal inundation and the worry about what the sea was doing. So I've been the secretary of the hut holders perhaps for as long as I can remember. Each year there's a little bit more erosion and it's a worry. You know, we want something to be here for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and we're worried that we need to do some work to mitigate the effects of the sea. The hut holders have always advocated for the river, and we were part of a team in the community that applied for the conservation order for the Rangitata. It was a community effort, a lot of groups came together. When it comes to issues that are important to the river, people do work together. The changes have been quite dramatic. If you look up here, the first thing you see is willows. When I was a child, there was hardly any willows. I think the quality of the water, particularly in what I call the weeps, the little streams that fall in the side of the river, is nowhere near as good with the extra nutrients going into the river. The fish numbers were at about 5% of where we were in the 1970s. It's got very little to do with what the anglers are caught. It's a lot to do with the environment in which the fish, the habitat that they live in. The smelt runs, I think, are about 5% of where they were in the 1970s as well. The smelt are key for the fish, for the bird life here. There's a lot of birds nest here. And one of the changes is the encroachment of farming into just about riverbed areas, and certainly the area over there on the north side used to be swamp and gorse habitat, particularly in the lower area for whitebait, and now it's all been developed into pasture. So that's a case of where the commercial interest has outweighed the environmental interest. I would like to think that there's a cap put on irrigation, no more additional irrigation. So the conservation order has changed to put a cap on irrigation. The minimum flows of the river, they're too low. The fencing and better setbacks from agriculture will all be helpful. The screening of the salmon from the irrigation wasn't working, and they've now spent $20 million on a new fish screen there. If that works, I think that's going to be the biggest single step in returning the fishery. I think water quality issues need to be more work done on them. You know, perhaps a few less cows in certain places, but that's not the end of the dairying, but just a few less in critical places. The return of some of the wetlands, there's some areas up here that probably could be returned. It'll be little things that'll make a difference. I just hope for my children, grandchildren, that we can improve the fishery. You know, I think it's important for the way of life. Otherwise we get our lives and our culture, we get channeled in a certain way. It'll be good if we can still maintain what I call the open spaces. But it's good to be able to go somewhere where you can feel that you're relating to nature and to the environment.